Aaron Tomlinson. Great to be with you, Derrick. Great to be with
Good to
our.
be here with you too, Aaron. I'm like, I look forward to Fridays. I was telling my son last night, and I'm not kidding, I'm not making this up. I was telling him that Friday night with you is my therapy.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, so I always look forward to it, and since we're here, and we usually drink, what's in the glass?
Yeah, so I'm going with red wine again tonight, but I know you're going to introduce our topic in a minute. But people will understand when you do. I got this bottle of wine, the Seven Deadly Zins,
Yeah, buddy.
a Zinfandel blend. But anyway, like I said, people will appreciate it. What about you? What you got in the glass?
Well, I have some. Well, let me I'll break down the whole thing for you. I've got some Uncle Nearest rye, which Uncle Nearest makes whiskey, and there are two varieties of that. One that's like a general blend, and one is a special blend. But they make a rye, and
Mhm.
I'm suddenly discovering rye because man, it's like really amazing. It's very sweet and very drinkable. But what I'm doing here is I'm adding a little bit of this Bird Dog chocolate whiskey, which
That's double.
I owe my dear friend and brother Aaron Tomlinson for introducing me to that. But as they say in the infomercials, but wait, there's more. I've got this pecan praline liqueur. And so if you've ever had like what are those candies, katydids, you know, it's got chocolate, caramel, and pecans in it. This is like a katydid in a glass. It's a fucking flavor party.
I love it. I love it. We're gonna have to keep track of these and write down these recipes and publish our own.
Yeah, man, we're
E-
gonna have the Phreology Mixology book.
exactly, exactly. I think that'd be awesome.
So, so the subject tonight um, is the left hand path, and I want to set this up by saying no one, and I mean no one, explains the left hand path better than Aaron.
Thank you.
There, you can scour YouTube and the internet and Facebook videos and TikTok, and you will not find a better teacher of this left hand path than Aaron. And let me tell you this, Aaron, that this was something I really well. Let me say this, that I've always looked at the left hand path from my Christian ministry days as something evil,
Right,
something to shun, right?
right.
And that was the way I always looked at it. But then when you started talking about it, you started teaching this, this was one of those areas where you started talking about this like about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And and I was paying attention. I was all in because I was like, I'd never heard this before. And I love it when you take an ideal or a paradigm and stand it on its head. And there are a few people that can do that successfully, but my brother, you are one. So I want to talk about the left hand path, and the subtitle to this is, Will the Real Devil Please Stand Up?
Uh, I love it.
So, Aaron, with that, I'm going to let you jump in, dive in, and take us there, man.
Yeah. So, just really brief history and explanation on the left hand path for people that don't know what it is or what we're even talking about. And if you Google it or if you search YouTube, you're going to get a lot of crazy stuff popping up and information. So, the origins of the term left hand path, at least in English, comes to us from Theosophy and Madame Blavatsky, who founded Theosophy, I
Ooh,
want to say in the late 1800s, 1900s, something like that,
yeah.
but very influential uh, occult movement, using terms that were ancient Hindu terms and Hindu concepts of what was called, what translates to a right hand path or a left hand path.
Yeah.
And here's the difference. The right hand path primarily seeks to harmonize itself with nature, or seeks union with God if they believe in God, or union with the universe. Basically, we're the ones that are adapting to nature. We're the ones that have the problem. And so the goal is to harmonize with the community around you, harmonize with nature, or harmonize itself with God.
Yeah.
And we'll probably get into some astrotheology or astrological or astronomical. I'm using that term, astronomy, not for a big number. Because I don't, some people don't believe in astrology, but whatever. The ancient study of the stars was called astrology, right?
Yep.
And so the right-hand path was the path of return that went through the sun, where you burn up, you cease to exist. The ego ceases to exist. Your personal will, independence, all that stuff ceases to exist, and you blend, right?
Yep.
So you go through the sun, you burn up, you blend. The left-hand path in the Sanskrit was the exact opposite of that. It was not so much to just, go against nature, but to go against the current and to bring the world into, how do I want to say this? I don't want to say it quite like that. It's the idea of manifesting your own will. So in other words, your will comes first. So in the right-hand path, it's not my will, but thy will be done.
Yeah.
In the left-hand path, it's thy will be done. Of course, with respect to ethics and what's owed to community and all those other things. So I don't want to give people this idea that you just go do whatever it is
Right.
that you want to do, regardless of the chaos it causes you, your future self, or the community around you. So that would be my short summary of right-hand path versus left-hand path. Left-hand path is about disrupting the order in order to evolve and change the order, and also evolving and changing so that you are crystallizing yourself, not seeking to surrender yourself.
Yep.
You're seeking to fully actualize yourself. And so the right-hand path is often associated with the daytime because of the sun burning up, returning through the heavens through the sun. The left-hand path is often associated with darkness, not something evil, but just darkness, because it's the idea that we all are stars and we each have a course. And when we discover that, we let our light shine and we follow our own course in harmony with what's around us. So that's how I would lay that out. How'd I do?
And that's a great unpacking, or basically think of this as like a Christmas gift. So what Aaron just did is he took the wrapping off, right, and opened the lid, right, and so he started taking all of the packing, the filler out of the box. So we're gonna start diving deeper into this. And one of the things that I understand about the left-hand path versus the right-hand path is that, see, this is what I was taught in Christian ministry, is that the right-hand path seeks to follow God. That it's external, right? And the left-hand path seeks to discover self, which is internal. But what does Christianity or any religion teach you? To deny yourself, right? And take up your cross and follow something,
Right.
In the Christian idiom, it's Jesus, right? So the left-hand path is taught to us as evil. And they will, what they'll do is they'll pull out the Latin etymological root of sinister, which when you talk about your hands, right, your right hand is called your dexter hand, and your left hand is called the sinister hand, right? And so people say, see, sin is at the beginning of it, but it's actually a compound word where sin is that which is separated from God or separated from source. But the ister, the etymology of that is eating or consuming. And so the sinister hand, or what is sinister, actually consumes sin, right? So again, like what, so we're talking about light and dark, right? So when we look at the universe, I read something recently. They said that 90% of the known universe is dark matter or dark energy. And that only 4% of the known universe is elements that we would understand, or physical particles that we would understand, that we can quantify, right? So
Mhm.
this dark matter, and to your what you were saying, Aaron, is that dark does not in and of itself mean bad. And that's the first paradigm that we need to shatter here, is that when people think being in the dark is in and of itself bad. Well, you gave the perfect analogy that we're all lights shining in darkness. And this is this is tied in well with the fact that we human beings, we are said to be composed of stardust. In other words, the
Yeah.
same stuff that makes up stars. And so if Christian folk, if you have your Bible, and I don't remember the scripture off the top of my head, but where Jesus said that you are the light of the world, you're the salt of the earth, right? That wasn't anything spiritual or metaphysical. Jesus was giving a chemistry lesson. You know, you are light, you are stardust, you are made of the stuff that the world or that the stars are made of. And that you are salt, right? Which salt is not just sodium chloride, but potassium, magnesium. There are other salts, right?
Mhm.
And those salts are life-giving. Life as we know it does not exist without salt, right? So we're light and salt in the darkness, but the darkness is not in and of itself evil. The dark energy is simply the medium in which we are suspended in,
Mm.
right? So just like the
Mhm.
planets, the stars are suspended in darkness, we too are suspended in darkness, and we too emit light. We are part of a greater human or spiritual galaxial composition.
Love it.
So to wrap this up before I kick it back over to you, is that
Sure.
this whole thing about left hand path, when they say sinister is evil, I'm going to turn that on its head, like you did with the tarot card earlier, and I want you to talk about that. Um,
Sure.
that turning what we understand on our head to, and people say, "Oh, I feel upside down. I feel lost." No, you're not lost. What's happening is that you're getting properly oriented, because what you assume to be reality is really what's askew, is really what's askance. It's you when you're turned upside down according to the wisdom of natural things, that you actually become right side up and you begin to
Mhm.
understand. So, Aaron, with that,
Mhm.
back to you.
Yeah. So, wait, it's so interesting because talking about perceptions of this. So, the left-hand path is typically associated with Luciferianism, Satanism,
Yep.
um, and when I say Satanism, I'm talking about the Anton LaVey version of Satanism, which is really an atheistic philosophy. A lot of it is just Nietzsche reworked,
Yeah.
um,
It's
and
Nietzschean
but
spirituality, basically.
yeah, but there's no necessarily belief in a literal Satan. So it's not this idea, at least in Anton LaVey's camp, that we're going out and worshiping a being that's out there, right?
Right.
Um, but here's what I find interesting about this, because and I think where we kind of landed on this topic, I was actually just meditating, and all of a sudden, this thought came to me about what it means to awaken. Like, what happens when a person awakens? It's a fun phrase to throw around: awakening, enlightenment, that kind of stuff. And I think there's this idea in some circles that when you wake up, it's all bliss. You wake up to bliss. You wake up, discover who you are. You wake up and discover God or spirituality or atheism because you were bound in tradition or whatever. But really, my experience, and I want to see how this goes with yours, and I'll give a couple examples. But my experience was waking up was realizing, dang, there's a lot of dysfunctional patterns that I have set up for myself because of what I've believed with and what I've agreed with in my mind. And realizing that stuff never felt comfortable with me. Like whenever I was in ministry, and you might or might not relate to this, but I would go to pastors' conferences or any conferences, where you'd meet pastors or pastor prayer meetings or Good Friday services where, churches came together, whatever the case may be. I always felt like very much a round peg in a square hole. It was so bad. If I went on flights someplace and people would ask me what I did, I would never say I was a pastor. Like a lot of people, that I knew that were pastors, that was a big prideful thing. Wow, I'm pastor. I have authority and the man of God, and I just never felt comfortable. It's not that I was embarrassed of it or whatever. It just felt like it never fit me. And I felt like I never really fit in. Right. So for me, waking up was realizing, and this is why I did the upside down, the hangman tarot card, is because as I progressed through this, I began to realize, okay, a lot of the dysfunction and problems that I've created for myself, a lot of the painful situations that have happened to me in my life have happened because of my belief in God and my faith and my religion. It was such a shock to me where it was like, I thought this was a cure. I thought this is what was helping me to wake up and realize, no, this is actually the devil. This is actually because, and I'm laughing, but I said I'd give a couple examples, like elements of Christianity, for sure, teach violence to the self. I mean, the whole archetype of Jesus on the cross that we're getting ready to, celebrate in a couple of weeks, the death, burial, and resurrection, is all predicated symbolically and theologically and linguistically on doing violence to the self. God had to do violence to God to forgive you for your sins.
Right.
And when you start to look at that, and then we call that love, it really is sadomasochistic in some ways. But my point is, I did a lot of violence to myself, a lot of like you said, self-denial, self-sacrifice, self-doubt, guilt, shame, warring with various different parts of myself, not understanding myself. All of that was the byproduct of religion. Now, as you begin to, disentangle yourself from that stuff, and you look at the societal ills now, look at how colonialism and Christianity was used to steal people's culture, to oppress people of different races. I mean, you don't have to look very far to see that. And the thing is, when you understand the history of it, and then you step back from it and you look at if you really have, I'm going to quote Bible, if you really have eyes to see and ears to hear, you can see that there is a really nasty, dominant, racist thrust in most of American Christendom today.
Yep.
And I think we saw that with the last administration very clearly. So it's interesting that I was waking up about 2016 is when I had this experience. It was like, whoa. And then right on the heels of that, right, we had the 2016 election, and I'm watching evangelicals get behind Donald Trump. And I'm just sitting back thinking, this is not the kind of guy you would have gotten behind, at least from my perspective. Let me just say this. I don't think Jesus is endorsing this kind of person to lead our nation.
No, listen, you have the 7 deadly sins in your glass. Donald Trump represents all of the 7 deadly sins.
He does.
I mean, literally. But go on.
Yeah, so all I'm trying to say is that from my perspective now, I view the religion I was part of, Christianity, as how do I say this? As the devil, I guess, since that's what we're talking about.
Right. Well,
But
the
now the
real
flip,
devil, please stand
but now
up.
the flip side of this is also true. If you start going against the current, the group mindset, now all of a sudden you're the adversary. The word Satan just simply means adversary, right?
Yep.
The adversary, the other. So now you're the Satan. You're the adversary. You can't help but look evil to them because you're going against the current. You're going against the mindset. So one of the things that really impacted me the last few months, book that I read, very small, two things. William Blake's book, Proverbs of Hell, which is a small, relatively small book, I guess. And Michael Aquino wrote a book called The Diabolicon. And The Diabolicon is fascinating. I got sucked in the first few paragraphs because Michael Aquino really brings out this idea that without a rebel, without something disrupting the system, without something disrupting the status quo, change is absolutely impossible. And if change is impossible, then growth and progress is also impossible. So every progression, from that perspective, every progression in every realm of human experience, whether it's scientific, whether it's medical, whether it's spiritual, however you want to look at it, begins on this Luciferian left-hand path principle.
Come on, man.
It has to disrupt the pattern and the flow of the way things are in order for there to be progress. So in that sense, Lucifer is the father of all progress.
Yep.
But those of us that represent that principle and speak openly about it like I do, obviously, I'm the devil to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And this is a funny thing about that, right? Because this was something that I remember when you started teaching about this, about the left-hand path and the Luciferian aspect of it. And this was an eye-opener for me because we know from our etymological or word studies in ministry, right, that Lucifer means light bearer.
Right.
Right. And so I had some trouble reconciling this as a Christian minister because I'm like, wait a minute, Lucifer means light bearer. Now, when you think about this in the religious paradigm where you think of darkness as being evil, that anything that brings light into darkness therefore must be what? Good.
Yeah.
So wait a minute. You mean to say that Lucifer is the cause of all sin, but Lucifer is the light bearer? And so this had me thinking. But when you taught on this, I was thinking about this that bringing the light is not talking about physical light. Like I'm sitting up here, I'm looking at a light. I've got a spotlight shining on me. It's not that kind of light. That it is an enlightenment,
Mm-hmm.
an enlightenment or a light to the spirit. So, if the light to the spirit is the light bearer, and watch this, quoting the Bible. This is in the Bible that Jesus is called the bright and morning star. What is the bright and morning star? Astrologically, it's the planet Venus. And astronomic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
Astrophysiologically.
Yeah. The planet Venus, right? Because Venus
Yeah.
appears in the eastern sky before the sun. So it is the harbinger of light, right? So astrologically and astronomology. God damn it! I'm not even drunk yet. Fuck.
I'm not even sure how to say it, so that's why I'm not helping you.
But you know what I mean,
Astronomically,
in
but that
terms of
sounds like a
astrology
big
and
number.
astronomy,
Yeah,
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 it's the same thing. It's like the harbinger of the greater light to come. And so Jesus, if you look at Jesus, Jesus is the light of the Father, right? So he's the light that ushers in the greater light. So I think about this, and I'll share this, and because we talked about this in the green room, that in the cartoons you always have the angel on one shoulder and the demon on the other shoulder, and they're both vying for your attention. They're vying for your affection. They're vying for for the control of your mind, right? And we always ascribe the right hand path to what? To the angel, right? But if the demon is indeed of Lucifer, and Lucifer is the light bearer, then that means that when it comes to enlightenment of what is it? Jesus said that if your eye be single, then you're full of light, right? So that would say that the angel or the demon on the left hand shoulder, for people that's watching, I guess is like this, right? That Lucifer or the demon is actually the good guy here, because he's the one that's bringing illumination.
right.
And I know that some Christians are going to watch this and they say, "Oh, that just confirms everything that I know about Derrick Day and Aaron
Oh,
Tomlinson,
I know.
and they're devil worshippers."
I know. I know.
And nothing can be further from the truth. If you look at this, I'm saying, let's look at this biblically. Biblically, that the light bearer is the good guy. It has to be, because that is Jesus is the light. And if he is the light, then that means he must be the light bearer. And if he is the light bearer, then that means Lucifer, biblically, is Jesus.
Yeah.
Biblically.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There's no way around that. He says that the last statement that the Bible makes, where Jesus makes a statement about himself, it's in the book of Revelation. I don't know the exact reference, but it's the last. If you've got one of those red letter Bible editions, the last title that he gives himself is in the Greek Phosphorus, which was the planet Venus, although they didn't understand that the star that they saw at night was the same star that they saw in the day.
Right.
So they had two different designations for them, but phosphorus was the light bringer.
Right.
Now, why is that important? Because when you go to Isaiah 14, where we pull out this mythology of the devil, Lucifer, son of the morning, it's the same in the Septuagint. It's the same. So Jesus is saying, I am this. So, I mean, that's undeniable if anybody studies their scripture. I have to laugh, and I want to bring this out, and I'm not picking on anybody. I'm not picking on this guy. But somebody, I had posted one of my posts, I talked about the left-hand path a little bit. And some guy comes and says, I don't remember how he said it. He said, there is no literal Satan, or Lucifer is not a proper name, and there is no literal Satan. You've been duped. And I thought, you probably ought to listen to some of my teaching before you decide that I'm duped. But that's beside the point. For me, these are principles. These are principles, not cosmic beings that we are attributing anything to. I'm saying there is a Luciferian principle. Now, I came to understand really early on, even though I didn't have the language to articulate it, or even necessarily had critically thought it through. But I remember reading Isaiah 14, the five I wills of Lucifer, right? I will ascend above the stars of the heavens. I'll sit in the throne. I can't remember all of them. It's been so long since I've looked at the passage.
Yep.
I will be like the Most High. Everything that Lucifer said in his heart there was everything Jesus
said he
or
was.
Paul said Jesus accomplished. He's
Yep.
seated at the right hand of God. He is like the Most High. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father.
That's right. Come on, man.
And we're supposed to be conformed to the image of Christ. So everything that we're putting off on Lucifer and dumping on him, it's exactly what, if we're theologically consistent and honest, what we are supposed to be being conformed to. So for me, I never saw Jesus in the story as the go along to get along guy. I always saw him as the disruptive force that was cutting against the grain, right? That was cutting against the order of the day, that was cutting against the religious and political communities. He was, in my sense, what a true prophet is, if I can use that term. It's someone who doesn't see the future. It's someone who becomes an initiator of change because they come from outside the group think and outside the mindset or the paradigm, and speak truth to power in that sense. And that's how I always viewed the character of Jesus when I was reading the scriptures. So again, just to be clear, because I laughed when you said that. People are going to say that you and me are
the devil.
The devil worship. Oh, I know. But it's, we're not sacrificing chickens in our backyard and putting curses on our enemies. We're simply.
Wait a minute, you're not?
Uh-oh. Are you?
Yeah, absolutely. I sacrifice a chicken every day.
I probably should mess with that. Shit, I got people out there I can do a number on. Don't mess with me. I'm a Luciferian. You're gonna be sorry. So anyway, I'll kick it back to you on that note.
No, you had said something about that there has to be a disruptor in order to create growth. And one of the things, and I learned this from Dan Brown's books, Angels and Demons and the Da Vinci Code and all of that. And he was talking about the Hashatan, which that's where the Satan comes from, yes, right? In Arabic. And the Hashatan is the destroyer, right? Now, watch this. That is where the word assassin comes from, right? That someone who destroys. But if you look at it in terms of creation, that creation cannot happen without destruction, right? Something has to be destroyed in order for something to be created. And that speaks to our mindset, right? Because for one mindset to emerge, another mindset must be destroyed. Right? So the Hashatan, the accuser, right? And this is like one of these things. I used to preach this all the time when I was in Christian ministry. I would say, a diamond cannot be perfected without pressure or friction.
Exactly.
Nor can a man be perfected without trial. Now, watch this. The Hashatan is the accuser, not of the person, but of the mindset.
Right.
And so when you look at it from that standpoint, the Hashatan is not the bad guy. The Hashatan accuses what you're thinking. In other words, it is bringing what you're thinking, your thought paradigm, your thought pattern into stark relief so that it can be examined, that it can be analyzed, and that some result can be derived from it.
Right.
Man, it was like, so again, when you started teaching on the left-hand path, and I think that I started following your teaching about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
That when I saw this, Aaron, this was, so you were talking about awakening, right? So there are two kinds of awakening, right? One is awakening to a physical reality. And if you awaken to a physical reality that is not perfect, you are going to be disappointed 100% of the time. I don't care how good your life is, you're going to wake up and be like, man, this is fucked up. But, and I'm like Sir Mix-a-Lot because I like big butts and I cannot lie. But if you are awakening to a spiritual reality, a paradigm shift, now you're awakening to something that, oh, wait a minute. What I've been thinking or what has cast my thinking is not entirely correct. So now, like the hanging man in the tarot card, I've been suspended from the tree upside down. And watch this. This is really gonna blow a lot of people's mind. Because if you have ever played as a kid and hung upside down from something, the monkey bar, a tree branch, a swing. If you hung upside down from something, now your perception of reality is altered. And you can't unsee this once you see it. What happens is when we get older, we kind of get calloused and we're like, oh, well, no, that really can't be. But that goes back to quoting Bible again, is having the mind of a little child.
Right.
So now if I go back to my upside down experience, what I see is the wonder, the excitement of seeing reality different. And so if you think about this, all of you who are listening, if you go back to when you're a child and you first hung upside down from a tree branch or you hung upside down from the monkey bar, what happens? First thing is that you get a rush of blood. This is a physical thing, a rush of blood and endorphins to your brain.
Mm-hmm.
You become disoriented. But then there's a sense of excitement, a sense of enlightenment, and a sense of awakening that you never, God damn. Man, sow a seed, God damn it. Because I'm preaching here.
Yes, you are. I'm about to start waving my hanky.
You get a sense of euphoria that you didn't experience before. And now you're seeing the world. Basically, if all you see is the world from right side up, you have not seen the entire world. I don't care if you've been on cruises, you've been on planes, you've been to every fucking continent, every fucking country, every fucking city. I don't care. If you have not seen it from hanging upside down, you haven't seen it. So again, this left-hand path is taking everything that you understand, your perception of reality, and hanging it upside down. And all of a sudden now spiritual endorphins, spiritual blood rushes to your brain. And all of a sudden the the matrix gets exposed.
Yeah.
Yep. Time to take a drink.
let's go into that matrix a little bit.
By the way, I wish I could have drank in the pulpit. That
would have been fun.
Listen, but go
on. Let's go into the matrix a little bit. Let's just think about this for a minute. Both the Old Testament and the New Testament are, how do I want to say this? Like in the ancient world, there was no separation between the gods and that governed the heavens as they perceived it and the kings that ruled the earth. So of course, like, okay, so like we know, let me back up and do an analogy. So you know, from our private conversations that I've really been frustrated with our public education system.
Yep.
What it does to kids.
Yep.
And so, you know, looking into that, Rockefeller, 100 years ago, probably,
Yeah.
was probably the driving thrust behind public education system the way it's set up. And it's still set up today.
Him and Henry Ford. Just
Yeah.
to throw that out there.
Okay. Yeah. It was there to create a good working class. We need a good working class. And so the emphasis is, it's so assembly line. I mean, think about it, right? You mention Henry Ford. What do you think of? Think of cars and how they're built, assembly lines. So you go from class to class, classroom to classroom, teacher to teacher, when the bell rings, showing up on time, not being late, making sure you're all doing the same work and you're held to some standard of grade. But the big thing is you're obedient. You're obedient to your teacher. You're obedient to your principal. And if you're not obedient, you get punished, right? So it's designed to reflect, it's not designed, it wasn't designed to really educate you. It was designed to build into you the disciplines that would be necessary and the mindsets that would be necessary to create an effective working class for the aristocracy, basically.
Exactly.
Now, ancient religion is the same thing. So I'll leave Judaism alone. I'll leave the Old Testament alone.
Go there. Fuck that. Go there.
I'm just saying that I don't want to get too much in the weeds with it, but the whole idea that King David was anointed by God, right?
Yeah.
Or that Moses gave them a law that they had to follow. That's governmental. That's society being governed. Society is governed by laws, and society is governed by authorities. And what gets highlighted throughout the whole of the Old Testament is the laws that governed God's society or Yahweh's society. Mm-hmm. And the kings and the priesthood and the prophets, the ones that were anointed to enforce the government, the law of God upon the people, right? So it's creating a society that puts the power in the authority figures, right? Just like, you see what I'm saying? We're taught the same power dynamics in school that you get in the factory. We're taught the same power dynamics in religion that the governing powers want us to have. I'm really going somewhere with this. That's why I don't want to take too long to set it up. But
dude, go.
Christianity, let's be honest. It got started in the 4th century as a Roman imperial religion that could unite or possibly reconstitute the Roman Empire, which was falling apart at the time. So it was an innovative idea to inspire the people, to really get them to believe in Rome and the Roman Empire. And so I want you to think about this. Let's look at some of the basic tenets of Christianity. You've got a monarch who sits on the throne, right? God rules from his throne. Mm-hmm. Jesus Christ is Lord of all. His name is above every name, right?
Yep.
He is so much greater and so much superior than you that your best possible life is lived in obedience to him and lived in obedience to his lordship. Doesn't that sound like something that the emperors of Rome might have wanted you to believe in the 3rd or 4th century?
Yeah.
Now, you have to behave a certain way, and we want you to behave in weakness rather than strength. And people are not going to like this.
Come on, man.
We want you to behave in weakness rather than strength. So we want you to turn the other cheek. And we want you to operate, if somebody demands of you that you go 1 mile, go 2 miles with them. If somebody asks to borrow money from you, give them your money. And ultimately, if someone sins against you, forgive them. Be reconciled to them. Obey the authorities that are, you see where I'm going? Obey the authorities that are there. Yeah. Now, so that's your behaviors. So we're going to emphasize the behaviors that make you weak rather than behaviors that might empower you to rebel against the empire.
Right.
And we're going to teach those as virtues.
Mm.
We're going to teach those as eternal spiritual laws. And if you violate them, you are violating God's law. And if you don't forgive others their sins, your Father in heaven won't forgive your sins. So we're going to threaten you with eternal condemnation unless you express that. And I'm not saying all forgiveness is weakness, but please, I mean, this is very nuanced discussion. I'm just trying to illustrate something. I'm aware of the nuances. I'm just saying that for anybody that's listening. Because I know I'm triggering people right now because we think forgiveness is a ubiquitous law that somehow is divinely ordained, when in many situations it perpetuates codependency, powerlessness, and weakness among the victim. It allows for the perpetrator victim or the victim villain or the villain victim relationship to continue with the consent of the victim.
Yeah.
That's why Jesus said, if your brother sins against you 70 times in a day, forgive him not just 70 times, but 70 times 7. In other words, stay in the cycle of abuse. You want to teach your kids? Is that something you want to teach your daughter? If you're out there, is that something you want? I know I don't want my kids to learn that. I don't want my kids to learn they've got to stay in this toxic cycle with toxic people because somehow they're just commanded to forgive. And so that's become a virtue that's so deeply embedded in the unconscious, in the collective unconscious of the Western psyche, that when people get into other spiritual paths, whether it is A Course in Miracles, whether it is some kind of offshoot of the New Age, or even Wicca to a certain point, because Wicca, now again, I'm not picking on the Wiccans or the witches. You guys get enough shit without me dumping on you. I'm just saying that Wicca arose, in the mid part of the 20th century through the writings of Gerald Gardner, who was, heavily influenced by Western thought. So what I'm trying to say is it's so deeply embedded, it feels second nature to us to say, to forgive us as a virtue, to turn the other cheek as a virtue, all that stuff. But it's teaching you that weakness is a virtue. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are I could keep going, right?
Yeah.
Then it goes into the level of thought crime. It's not that you do it, it's that you even think about it.
Right.
That it's a sin. So now we're almost Orwellian in the 4th century when the Bible's being put together, when they're deciding what books to put in the Bible. Listen, this is why I say Christianity is a creation of the 4th century, because the Bible was put together after the Council of Nicaea. And so they chose the books and the writings and they redacted them and they interpolated them, which means they changed them to fit the structure and the government of the system that they were setting up. All right. So, but you see where I'm going with this. So, so now you can see how empires seized on this. So there's a reason you have Roman Catholic Church, Greek Orthodoxy, Russian Orthodoxy, the Anglican Church. These were all connected to countries and monarchies.
Yep.
And there was laying on of hands and healings in the Dark Ages. The only problem was the king was the only one that was anointed to do it. So they would sometimes have meetings where the kings would come out and I guess, pick some special ones or something and have, I guess, a Pentecostal service. Which is why people today, they don't understand the separation of church and state. They try to lift the ideas of the separation of church and state out of its 1776 context in the New World. We're escaping the monarchy. We're creating a new form of government that allows the aristocracy to be free from the tyranny of the monarchy.
Right.
It wasn't really built or structured for everybody, as we know. It was so that, hey, you're not going to touch our wealth. No taxation without representation unless we're the ones doing the taxing. I mean, let's just be honest.
Right.
However, these ideas were very powerful, that God has created all men equal and given them certain inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So from that perspective, the entire Constitution, foundation of the great American nation is Luciferian.
It's Luciferian.
Because it's saying everybody, you don't have to conform. You don't have to give up your rights. We'll
But
protect your rights.
that makes perfect sense because most of the founding fathers were Freemasons. Now, I'm not picking on Freemasons because, full disclosure, I have been a Freemason, right? Full disclosure, right? That and I support the Masonic ideal. Full disclosure. That okay, so people say that this whole idea of what is freedom, right? Fuck, I'm having a senior moment. Take me back to where you were.
So what I'm saying is, I was talking about separation of church and state. People try to take it out of its 1776 context and put it in its what they think is its 21st century context, and somehow flip it on its head that the Christians are being persecuted.
Right.
All that stuff, or they're trying to get prayer in schools, or they're trying, the issue was to break apart in 1776. The issue was to break apart the mental structure, the philosophical structure, and the moral structure that God was intrinsically linked with a monarchy or a nation or a state, Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, etc.
That's where I was going. Is that the whole thing about the Enlightenment, right? That began with like Adam Weishaupt and people like that. Was that the monarchy is not the seat of power in humanity, that it is the individual.
Yeah.
And so when you start talking about the individual, now you're saying, okay, the individual is greater than the authority, right? And that's the Masonic ideal. And so when the founding fathers founded this country, most of them were Masons, and they were part of this Enlightenment, right? And again, the Enlightenment is the left-hand path,
Right.
because the left-hand path says, I'm going to turn within. I'm going to celebrate the individual. I'm going to unpack and unearth and reveal the individual over the state, over the aristocracy, over the ruling class. And that was the whole that was the principle that the American ideal was built on. Right? And so this whole thing about people say, okay, left-hand path, and this is evil, right? And so this is where I want to get to will the real devil please stand up? Because this guy has to be revealed, right? Yeah. We are going to expose the devil. Remember back in the day when we say, we're going to expose the devil and shame him. We're going to lay him bare publicly and bring him to shame. Let me tell you who the real devil is. If you want to see the real devil, look in the mirror. Because that is your Satan. Mm-hmm. What you see in the mirror is your Satan. That is your Hashatan. That is your destroyer. Most people, when they are brought low, when they are shamed and publicly humiliated, it is themselves that brought this on. It's not anything external, it's internal. So when I say, will the real devil please stand up? I'm saying to you who's watching this, you who's listening to this, stand up. Because you are your own devil. You are your own Satan. You are the one who is accusing you. Listen, Aaron and I, we love you, but we don't give a fuck about what you think about you. That's on you. And if you are feeling discouraged, if you are feeling accused, if you are feeling subdued, if you are feeling subordinated, that is on you, baby boy, baby girl. That is you, 100%. So when I gave the analogy about the angel on one shoulder, devil on the other shoulder, right? They are both the same person. Just like how if we look at this biblically, Jesus and Lucifer are the same person. But Jesus and Lucifer don't exist physically, but you do. And you are your own Jesus. You are your own fucking Messiah. You are your own fucking Savior. But you are your own accuser. You are your own destroyer. You are the one that will either elevate you and lift you up high, or you are the one who will bring yourself down low. You. So when the real devil, please stand up, stand the fuck up.
So I love that you went there. I'm gonna bring out a little more with that. So trying to think the best way to do this, because I want to be understood. So I'm trying to think about, because I'm going to take a risk that I could be really misunderstood. So I'm going to try and choose my words carefully here. But
no, hold on. Let me stop you there. Don't worry about being misunderstood, because at the end of the day, those who want to misunderstand you
right.
are going to misunderstand you without your disclaimer.
Yeah, you're right.
So keep going.
Luciferianism teaches as a philosophy. If you look at a philosophy of the left-hand path, or Luciferianism specifically, it teaches that there is no other God but you. Now, that sounds scary to people, because people can hear that one way, and they can say, Aaron, you're saying there is no God but me, or there is no God but you. What about being judged? What about moral accountability? What about justice at the end of time, or whatever? You know, how do these things, I mean, that's where a lot of these religious concepts come from, is that innately as humans, we are struggling and wrestling with injustice and trying to figure it out, right? So it's nice to know that down the road there will be a judgment day when everybody will get their just desserts, right? I mean, that's really comforting thought. Or not. But here's the point I'm trying to make. Someone can hear that. If I were to say to someone deeply entrenched in the system, deeply indoctrinated in the system, like you and I were several years ago, Derrick, the moment I say there is no God but you, the moment that I say that, all these alarm bells are going to go off, because we are going to project onto the other person and assume that they hear it the same way we're hearing it, which means if there is no God but us, then there is no judgment. Then we can just go out and do whatever the hell we want to do. And most of the time, whatever the hell we want to do is stuff that's going to be harmful and hurtful to people. That's what we're thinking and projecting in our own minds when we're tied into the system.
Yeah.
Now, you can also hear that there is no God but you, to realize, oh shit, if it's going to be, it's up to me. And therefore, I have to think deeply. I have to think ethically. I have to think appropriately about the actions that I take, about the direction of my life, because there is no God coming to save me, number one, and there is no devil that I can blame anything on. So the first principle of Luciferian philosophy is complete self-responsibility, that you are responsible to yourself. We would hear that when we're part of the Christian groupthink, that as a scary thing, as an immoral thing. You're going to unleash hell. If you're not accountable to God and there's no eternal ramifications and there's no justice, you're just going to unleash hell on everything. Or you can hear that as, I have to be responsible for me.
Yep.
And I have to take responsibility for me. I have to take responsibility for what I say, for what I do, for how I show up in the earth. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
I don't know if I'm quite getting that across, but here's the other part to this that I want to get into, Derrick, because you talked about the Satan or the devil being inside of you. Here's the other part I want to get into. Why is it that when we were on the right-hand path of Christianity, sacrificing our lives, sacrificing our will, not my will, but thy will be done, I'm going to try to adopt these weak behaviors because that's going to make me more like Jesus. Why would we hear someone who says, like, why would we assume if there is no governing moral authority that you're going to go out and be a devil in the sense of a destructive force? Why would we think that? Because we are projecting the destructive nature and or creative nature that is within us, that's within us. And this is the second principle of Luciferianism, to understand that, yes, you have darkness inside of you. Yes, you have destructive forces inside of you. Yes, you have creative forces inside of you. And the goal is not to kill them. The goal is to get in touch with them, explore and discover them so that you can refine and control them. Christianity and right-hand path religions and right-hand path New Age spirituality teaches you to ignore all that stuff, to spiritually bypass all that stuff. And it leads you to what Carl Jung called projection. I am projecting my shadow self.
Ooh.
So we just found out, like, one of the things that I've been accused of, and I've never addressed it publicly like this, but, you know, I've been accused of stealing money, which there's no paper. I mean, there's no truth to it whatsoever. But here's what we found out. The people that were the most rabidly accusing to us actually ripped us off and we didn't know about it. So it goes back to what Jesus said. You see a speck in your brother's eye, but you're really seeing the plank in your own eye. You can't see anything but the plank. So everybody you look at, you think has the same characteristics.
Yep.
So the other thing that's great about this path, this left-hand path, is it gives you the freedom to explore these things. So one of the last messages I did before we closed up our church, I called it the positive power of the power of darkness. And then I did another one called Opening the Gates of Hell. And when I talked about opening the gates of hell, I said, the gates of hell are inside of you. These forces are inside of you. And I used Job and Leviathan. Do you remember? I don't know, Derrick, if you ever got around people always talking about the Leviathan spirit, the twisted serpent in Revelation or Isaiah 13. And then Job, I think 37 or 38 talks about it. And for sure, Leviathan in the ancient world was a god of the underworld. Leviathan was what we might think of as Christians as Satan today. The god of chaos, the god that lived in the ocean. But when we understand all that stuff's in us, my subconscious, my collective unconscious is a deep ocean. I'm going to quote scripture. Oh gosh, now I can't think of it. Counsel in the heart of man is like deep waters, and a man of understanding draws it out, right? Out of your heart flow rivers of living water. So that ocean, what's under there are some Leviathans under there.
Yep.
And what Job is actually teaching is how to raise Leviathan. And once, if you read the passage closely, and I did a teaching on this, if you raise the passage, raise Leviathan, then you find that his eyes blaze with fire. Oh, gee, what does that remind you of? You discover that he's a very luminous being. So what was a devil, when it's brought and out of the water and tamed, becomes an angel. So here's the truth. Right. Those destructive powers that are inside of you is where your strength is. Those creative powers, those lusts. This is why I love the Proverbs of Hell from William Blake, because he almost makes virtues out of everything that we condemned about our own humanity and Christianity and the subsequential spiritualities that have arisen from the collective unconsciousness of the Western world that is still deeply embedded with Christian symbology and theology and ethos.
Yep.
And so when you're saying the Satan is in you, like, yeah, we all think, destructive thoughts. We all think lustful thoughts or whatever. Those are parts of us, but they're not things to be shunned. They are things to be embraced. They are things to be mastered. They're to be raised to their highest potential, to their highest vibration, and controlled and mastered. And that was the thing that ultimately led me away from Christianity, because there is no good path on any right-hand path spirituality that I have discovered that really helps people deal with those dark aspects of their nature.
Yep. And that's because what's external is not going to help you. We are only changed from the inside out,
Right.
right? So the left hand path points inward, the right hand path points externally. But I want to say something out there to all the Christians that are listening to this, right? Leviathan. Leviathan. Levi is the priesthood.
Okay.
Levi is the priesthood. Leviathan is the monster of the priesthood.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
It is the priesthood that consumes us. It is the priesthood that devours us. It is the priesthood that exerts authority over us. Leviathan.
Wow.
All of this ties together. And so again, when you talk about who is the real devil, right? The real devil is, let me say this, right? Because people will say, some people who are deconstructing from Christianity, they'll say the priesthood is the devil. The priesthood is the accuser. But let me tell you this, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, that the priesthood has no authority over you other than what you give it.
Right.
If you don't acknowledge Leviathan, right, then Leviathan, the priesthood, has no authority over you. It is not a giant against you. You, I wish I knew what the Aramaic or Hebraic root of you are is versus Levi. Levi, whenever you see Levi in scripture, it pertains to the priesthood. So whenever you see Leviathan, Leviathan does not, it doesn't point back to some mythical serpentine creature. It points back to the priesthood. Let me tell you something. I'm going to say this, and this is going to really blow a lot of people's minds. The Bible, the Bible deconstructs itself.
Yes, it does.
If you're paying attention, the Bible will deconstruct itself. It will show you that everything that it has shown you is not real.
Yeah.
And so let me say this too, because we were talking about darkness and how darkness is not evil.
Right.
If you look, if you're like in stealth mode and you're hiding behind a corner and you're looking for your adversary, you will likely see the shadow of the adversary before you see the physical manifestation of it. In other words, you see the darkness of it before you see the light of it. What am I saying? Is that what you fear, because here's the thing, people are afraid of the dark.
Mm-hmm.
That's a natural human emotion. If you turn off the lights in a public place, you will get panic
Yeah.
because people are conditioned to be afraid of the dark. But if you know that most of what you perceive is darkness,
Mm-hmm.
then when the darkness shows up, all you're seeing is a manifestation of what most of reality consists of. And if you understand that, that will take the fear away. So that when the darkness manifests, you understand that number one, I am light in this darkness. I fucking am the light that is manifesting in this situation. I am.
Mm-hmm.
Not because of any God, not because of any deity, not because of any creator, not even because of any source, but because I am light.
Mm.
So I'm going to manifest something in the face of this darkness that the darkness itself can't comprehend and that the darkness itself must yield to. Oh my God. It's like if you strike a match in a dark room, around that match, there is no darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the darkness exists. You can't deny the darkness. But at that point of the flame, there is light. Think of yourself as that match in the darkness. Listen,
Go ahead.
I want to say this to
You're
everybody
getting me fired up.
that the left-hand path, and let me say this too, that when we say, will the real devil please stand up? And we say that the devil is you, just like how darkness is not evil, that devil that's in you is not evil. That devil in you is the light bearer in you that shines in the darkness, that illuminates. And here's the thing, the darkness is not the evil around you. The darkness is simply that which you are suspended in. It is the field that you as a particle or as a wave exist in.
Mm-hmm.
So this darkness is not something to be feared. It's not something to be rebelling against. It's not something to be contesting against. It's something that simply is.
Yeah.
But you are light. But watch this. You said something earlier, and I want to piggyback on this, is that if everything is light, then there is no way to manifest light.
Mm-hmm.
If everything is light, nothing is seen. Darkness is required for vision.
Mm-hmm. Can I jump in?
Oh man.
Here's what I love about the left-hand path, because here's what we're offering people: an opportunity to really get to know yourself free from judgment. That's number one. Number two, an opportunity for you to take back your power, to connect to your power, to hopefully inspire you, to motivate you, to somehow reconnect you, to say, in the midst of this overwhelming sea that we call society and humanity, or the universe, or however you want to look at it. I mean, there's so many forces, right? Like, I'm so frustrated. I don't know about anybody else out there, but I am so frustrated with the economy right now. And I don't, you know, it's funny because I say that because then all of a sudden that leads into politics, and people can construe that as I'm blaming the current administration. That has nothing to do with it. Like, people don't understand how complex macro and economics work, or how much the system is set up against the common person.
Yeah.
It really, really is. And it doesn't
Hang
matter
on
what
for a second. Let me throw something in there real quick. That for everybody that's thinking that this is the current administration, I encourage you to look up what the out years are.
Thank you. I will do that myself. I suspect I know what they are, but I'm gonna do that. But my point is, like, I'm frustrated, right? Like, so it's really easy to slip into this sense of, I don't matter, I can't make a difference, I don't have any power, I can't control inflation, I can't control interest rates. All that interest rates are going to do is probably cost me in terms of my personal wealth, whatever I have invested in my home, right? I mean, there's all this stuff. And so what we're saying is, in the midst of all this craziness, that the left-hand path offers you an opportunity to connect with, to know yourself, to connect with your personal power, and to say that you do have power and influence, and you can make a significant difference by letting your light shine. And we're offering you the freedom, the absolute freedom and opportunity to explore your own essence and what it is that makes you uniquely you, and then examine the programming of society, whether it came from education, whether it came from politics, whether it came from religion, whether it came from your racial background, your ethnic background, or your family. And I'm hearing the word of God to Abraham. Abraham, get away from your family, get out of your country, your father's country, get out of your house, get out of everything.
God was saying to Abraham, he said, get the fuck away from your crazy kinfolk.
Yeah, but that's kind of what we need to do. I mean, like, the way I see it is like, at that, those are various different levels of programming. Country, Christian nationalism is the way. That's what I was programmed to believe, right? And that's what so many on the right are fighting so hard to keep that program in place. That's why they don't want, even though CRT has nothing to do. That's why CRT, those initials have just become a moniker for, let's get rid of anything that might offend white Christian nationalism.
Yep.
So that people don't hear it and they're not exposed to it. That's a programming that you received. And so what we're saying is that the Luciferian principle is challenging the programming and challenging the status quo. And I'm going to say it again. You have the opportunity to connect with that, to connect with what makes you you, to connect with your essence, and not make it demonic, and not make it evil, and not make it horrible, but to honor it, to honor your highest and truest expression of yourself, to find out what all of your potentials are, physically, spiritually, whatever, and bring them absolutely to the surface to be celebrated. And in the process, to understand you're going to be an agent of change, which is going to create conflict. It's going to create false accusations. It's going to create hatred. It's going to alienate you. You may have to get out of your father's house and your country and your family, because it may alienate you from all of them, because the programming that you got from them may not resonate with your highest and best self. And so what we're saying is that you can connect with these archetypes, you can connect with these principles, and by honoring them, they can energize your spirit and empower you to manifest these things for the betterment of yourself and for the betterment of everyone around you. So for everybody that wants to demonize that and make that evil and make that horrible, then at least know what you're dealing with, right? I mean, you think Luciferians are just all out sacrificing children to demons and involved in sex trafficking and some shadow government over the world. Bullshit. It's the upside down. It's the hanged man in the tarot. He's enlightened. His face has the light, like all the angels and saints of that time period. Well, that's why I picked that particular tarot, the Rider-Waite one, because it comes from the time period when tarot originated, and the light around, that's what the saints had. And so what it's showing you is that the saint is an upside down hanged man.
Yep.
Hanging on nature.
Yep. You know, have you ever had somebody that looked at you and said, Aaron, you have that Shekinah glory all about you?
I have had that said to me.
You know what that is that's when the physical and the spiritual essence of you rushes to your face,
Right.
and you begin to glow as the Bible said Moses did. When
Right.
you need a veil over your face because you're so fucking shiny.
Yeah.
Man,
I,
we need to
I,
look at the comments, man. But go ahead.
I
You
can
got
do this all
to.
night. Let me throw one other thing out there, and then yeah, we can look at the comments. Um, this is where I think you and I. So we've had this little, you're an atheist, I'm a theist kind of thing going
Yep.
back and forth. But at the end of the day, it's linguistics, because I think we agree on the same principles. We just maybe use different language to describe them.
Yep.
So here's what I believe, and I'm just going to throw it out there. I believe that I am eternal, from eternity past to eternity
With you on
going
that.
forward. I do not believe the end of my physical existence will be the end of my existence. I do not believe that. Nor
With
do I
you on that.
believe that my birth or conception in my mother's womb was the first expression that I had. So what I would call God, how I would define God, is that intelligence, whatever it is,
Consciousness.
that consciousness that governs the universe. So there's an intelligence in my body. If I cut my finger, my finger immediately knows to start healing itself. There's an intelligence that governs that. If I drink my wine, my body goes through processes. It knows exactly what to do with that wine and how to metabolize it and all that stuff. I don't even have to think about it. There's an intelligence to that, right? There's an intelligence that keeps our ecosystem in balance. So whatever that intelligence is, whether it's energy, whether it's consciousness, whether it's source, whether it's God, whatever that is, when I say I am a theist or I believe in God, that's what I believe in.
Yeah.
And I believe we all came from that we are all part of that. We are not other than that. And we need to learn how to access that and bring that into human manifestation. So when I talk about spirituality and stuff, that's what I'm talking about. When I talk about God, that's what I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
And as part of this intelligence, there is this thing called consciousness, and we do have archetypes, various different archetypes and energies and stuff that is in that consciousness that we have absolutely no biological explanation for whatsoever,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And they contain an essence and a power that I would call spiritual, that when you connect with them, you are connecting with a resource that empowers your light to shine. So for me, Christ has nothing to do with Jesus of Nazareth as much as it has to do with that principle of divinity that has been made manifest within humanity. And that's true of all of us. And therefore, we're not trying to build a religion. We're not trying to build a groupthink. We're not trying to build a conformity. We're trying to say, no, we want to celebrate the diversity in harmony rather than othering or fighting or all that other stuff. So anyway, that's the end of my TED Talk. That's the end of my sermon. Let's get into the comments.
No, let me just say this before we get into the comments really good, that I'm completely in agreement with you. You know, your teaching on consciousness has been transformative for me. I don't believe in a God as some loving God that has all of our best interests at heart and he wants to gather all of us toward. No, I don't believe in that God. But I do believe that there is a consciousness that engulfs and governs and permeates us all. That I'm in complete agreement with. And and I think and this is my experience that when you and I and others get in touch with this collective consciousness, that when we tap into this, that we begin to see things for what they really are. That
Yes,
we
exactly.
see the natural, we see the material, but we see what transcends the natural and the material and the supernatural, and we get into the mystical.
Yep.
So anyway, that being said, let's go to the comments because there's a bunch of them, and
Yeah.
there's some really good ones.
I'm starting at the bottom here. Ben Urban says, change agents rise and shine while stubbornly immutable types beat themselves up, burn themselves out, and bury themselves in uninspired, glorified routine. Ugh. Ben, you make my brain hurt sometimes, bro, with your writing. I love it. It's great, but you make me think like no other. Very eloquently said.
Doug Wentz says some of the most diabolical programming to make people think is to make people think that judging people for not being a vegetarian or for being gay is the same thing as exposing police brutality and the continued murder of unarmed black men. All that does is neuter the agents of social change. Doug, that may be one of the most powerful comments that I've ever seen as long as Aaron and I have been doing this.
Yeah, we need to get Doug on and talk about his views. Which I got to toss Doug a lot of credit here because he's been very influential in how my thinking has been shaped in the last 4 or 5 years, however long I've known him. And I never would have discovered the left-hand path or these principles that we've been sharing tonight if Doug had never exposed me to it. He sent me one video that just changed my life. But it wasn't just a video. It was talking to him and being able to discuss things with him.
Doug
I
is
mean,
fucking awesome.
he is a master he is an encyclopedia of spiritual knowledge across the board. It doesn't matter whether it's Christianity, the New Age movement, the occult, Satanism, Luciferianism. I mean, the dude has done his homework. He's a brilliant guy. And so, Doug, I just got to tip my hat to you, man. I would not be where I'm at today, and I would not be living the life I am today if it weren't for you. And I just want everybody to know that he's really influenced me. So it doesn't surprise me when you say that's probably the best comment that we've received. But we definitely need to get him on the show and have a good time. We'll have a good time.
I got to say this too, is that the left-hand path, understanding the left-hand path has helped me to live a better life, Aaron. I mean, because last year I made the most money that I made since my wife and I have been married. We bought this house here in Tulsa. You know, and this is so interesting, right? I have a neighbor who has a Ferrari FF. And typically he drives it in the morning. He doesn't drive it at night. And I guess I kind of understand that because it's kind of rowdy. And and I'm living in a neighborhood where 3 houses down from me, there's a guy with a fucking Ferrari.
I love it. I love it.
What I'm saying is that so let me say this about the left-hand path versus the right-hand path, right? Because there is an external yearning. You know, we do want to find truth outside of ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is when you say, I'm relying on that, or that this is the way, right? In order to have a complete life, a holistic life, then you have to embrace both the left-hand path and the right-hand path. And you have to understand that what you perceive to be God and what you perceive to be Satan can be found in both the left and the right-hand path. That's the point that's the whole point of this particular episode. And Tommy Stewart says, the left-hand path because I fucking rule.
I love that, Tom.
I love Tommy.
So I want to comment on this. Ben Urban says, Satan is the best friend the church has ever had, as he has kept them in business all these years. Anton LaVey's statement, 9 of 9. Now, it depends on how you interpret that. How do you interpret that statement? He's kept them in business. I'll just throw mine out. because this works. This, you don't just see this in Christianity or church. You see this in any group where someone is trying to maintain power over how you think. They will convince you that the questioning voices originate from an evil source, from a uncredible source, or from a questionable source. It's the entire reason that my reputation in my community has been completely destroyed, because I had to be discredited. There was a group of pastors I found out from a pretty good source that would meet every week to pray against me, and there was even a significantly sized, well, that's happened more than once, but recently, significantly sized congregation in our community where the pastor was preaching against us. There was another one in a community 25 miles away where one of my friends told me they had to go to the pastor because every time the assistant pastor would preach, he would preach against me. And so I've been accused of everything you could possibly imagine, Derrick. I mean, if the accusations about me get out there, you won't even want to be my friend anymore. But I'm going to tell you right now, there's no.
I'll be your friend. I'll be your friend
because
because
I know you would, but I'm just saying. But the oldest trick in the book, Satan or the other, or the Hashatan, the adversary who originates in evil, keeps groups existing because they tell you your questions, your threat to the status quo is originated from an evil source, so that you will quit thinking that, so that you quit asking those questions, so that you will conform and go along with the program. So of course Satan has been Christianity's best friend. But it's not just Christianity, it's anybody that's trying to control you. When you start questioning their control, their opinion, or their ideas, this could happen in families. Oh, it's those friends you're hanging around now. And I'm not throwing this out to kids, that maybe your parents, they are maybe smarter than you and they're trying to protect you. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying, like, even in codependent abusive relationships, one of the characteristics of a narcissistic abuser is he will alienate you from your family members and your friends and your other relationships to strengthen their control and influence over you. And they'll make snide remarks, catty remarks about anybody that they might perceive as a threat. So that's all I got to say about that.
Well, Ben Urban says the Leviathan is the Lord of the Labyrinth, which watch Hellraiser 2. And I'm going to tell you something. You know something? Out of all the horror movies I've ever seen, the Hellraiser movies gave me the most fucking nightmares.
Oh, wow.
Because that was some shit. Like you discover an ancient artifact, and this thing is, you think of it as like a Rubik's Cube or something like that, but it's really a torture instrument, right? It's there to bring hell on earth. So Ben, yes, I completely empathize with that.
This is a fascinating comment again from Doug Wentz. Levi priesthood, Atan, is the solar only god of Egypt, a short-lived and dysfunctional monotheistic phase in Egypt. So yeah, so there was a point in one of the dynasties where there was a pharaoh who said that Atan, the solar god, which later I think became
Atan.
Yeah. But it's the solar. This is why it's so upside down. It's the solar god, and the right-hand path is based on solar principles. There's one God. You have to be absorbed. I mean, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, you can see how these patterns just keep emerging. And it really, really, really is like waking up to a world that's upside down, that's completely other than what you thought it was. Anyway, that's a great comment.
Dude, when you shared that tarot card of the man hanging upside down, dude, that was like, I was like, ah, I was like, and immediately, the analogy that I gave of like hanging upside down from the monkey bar or hanging upside down from the tree branch, I immediately got it.
Yeah,
I was 1,000% on board with you when you posted that.
I knew you'd get it. Thank you. I'm glad you appreciated it.
Yeah, Shannon Morris says use all the gifts. All the gifts. Ben Urban says projection is religious in practice.
Oh no. So Andre Theogent, I'm not sure if I'm saying the right. And Andre,
No, the giant, Andre the Giant.
Andre the Giant, like the
Yeah,
wrestler from the 80s. God.
exactly. Yes.
Oh my God. Um, so Andre, I hope I'm understanding this, because in that same context, when Ben's talking about projection, you say, if you don't practice astral projection, I ain't listening to your spiritual advice. I'm a seasoned and practiced astral projector. If anyone is interested in learning astral projection, let me know. It is a key to awareness. So I don't know if there was a misunderstanding here, but since we didn't talk about astral projection at all in this episode, but we did talk about projection.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that maybe there was some misunderstanding there. I'm talking about the psychological principle of what you deny in yourself, what you hate in yourself, you see in other people, and it's not really there. So thus it is a projection. You're projecting your consciousness onto the other person, and has nothing to do with projecting your consciousness into astral realms. So if that was a misunderstanding, I just wanted to clear that up.
And by the way, I just want to say I'm completely down with astral projection.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So
totally. And I understand your perspective, why you would feel the way you do. Completely and totally get it. And maybe there was no connection there or misunderstanding, but in case there was, I just wanted to clear that up. If you're still watching, Andre. I like the British Bulldogs myself.
Taryn Jerome Harris says, replying to Andre the Giant, he said, it's been said that Mary Magdalene was sucking on it too.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I don't even want to go there.
Let me say this. Let me say this, because there is so much about sexuality that converges with spirituality.
Yeah.
And so when someone makes a sexual illusion, I'm kind of all into that. I don't know if that makes me a freak or not, but if that's the case,
you Egyptian. Cool. You're getting in touch with your Egyptian roots, because the Egyptian temples were quite sexual.
Yeah, but that's the thing, like I posted something that on a meme today. It was like that circa 9 months BC, Joseph comes home early and hears Mary in fervent prayer, "Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God," and decides he better just leave her be.
I get it. Oh my God.
So my caption to that was that the prayer to the "Oh God" is a prayer that might produce something. Sorry. I mean, I just believe that there is a connection between sexuality and spirituality.
Oh no, absolutely. No, I completely 100% agree. In fact, I think sex is the most sacred act that human beings can
You're
have.
absolutely right.
And my argument for that would be, of course, I'm only referring to heterosexual sex, so I'm not discounting the sacredness of other forms of sexual orientation or expression before I say this. But it's the only act by which another human being is created and brought into the world. So how can there be anything higher or more sacred or more spiritual than that? I don't know. So those energies are creative energies, whether they're expressed heterosexually or in some other form or by yourself. It's still sacred.
Yep.
Like your tap. I mean, think about that, Derrick. We should bring there's another area where Doug has really impacted my thinking. We should bring Doug on and do a thing on sacred sexuality and sex magic, because you're raising the procreative energies. And even Napoleon Hill talks about this in his book about transmuting sexual energy into creating wealth. But anyway, well, that would be a great
Well, no, like when even in the Bible, it talks about the sacredness of the sex act, right? Because what happened when Onan went into his brother's wife, and he decided, okay, Onan decided, I'm gonna go on to the pullout game instead of actually, giving my brother's wife seed. And what does God do? God says, okay, I'm gonna strike him down. It's and it's funny. It's funny that Christianity uses that as a metaphor as to why you shouldn't masturbate. But Onan wasn't masturbating. Onan was getting busy. He just decided, hey, instead of listen,
That's a really good point, Derek. Onan
if
wasn't masturbating.
it
Hello.
wasn't masturbation. It's like basically Onan was the father of the pornography money shot. If you think about it, what did do? Well, Onan pulled it out and spilled it on the floor. He threw it on the ground. I'm just saying, but the thing is that biblically, sex is sacred. It's like it's how God brings souls into the world. So yeah, Doug, if you're still on and you're still listening, we want you. We want you. Like Uncle Sam, I want you. Let's see who else is out
Let me
there.
just throw this as a side note. That's also why, like, the denial of that energy, it's so powerful and it's so strong. If you don't embrace it and accept it and figure out what yours is doing, figure out what your unique expression of sexual energy is doing, it will destroy you. It will absolutely destroy you because it's more powerful than any other aspect of your consciousness. So if you try to suppress it rather than accept it, if you try to kill it rather than enjoy it, you're going to end up doing something twisted and stupid, which is also why we see so much sexual scandal in
Yep.
religion. And not just Christian religion. That happens with the gurus too. It happens in the New Age movement too. Anyway.
No, here's the moral of the story. I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound kind of vulgar, but I'm going to say it just like find someone who you can fuck. Real simple. Because if you don't, you're going to get into all kinds of deviation of sexual behavior.
Yeah.
And when I say deviation of sexual behavior, I'm not talking about, sexuality, like whether you're in the same sex relationships or polyamory or anything like that. What I'm saying is that you will do things that violate the constraint of a true relationship. That's what'll happen.
Mm-hmm.
So find someone who you can fuck. I promise you, you'll feel better. You'll feel better. Fucking is natural.
Yeah.
So Terran Jerome Harris, I got to throw this out here. He says, replying to Ben Urban, it's also why the pastor has to chastise all his female congregants about wearing tight clothes and showing too much skin because they're a stumbling block to men who are trying to live holy. Let me say this. The Church of God in Christ, which was founded by Bishop C.H. Mason after the Azusa Street revival, and what a lot of people don't know is the Church of God in Christ and the Assemblies of God are basically the same church, except one is black and one is white, because the white people decided that they weren't going to follow behind some black spiritual leader. But that's another thing. But there is a splinter of the Church of God in Christ that demands that women wear closed-toed shoes. Now, why is that? Because some motherfucker in the pulpit has a toe fetish.
Oh my God.
and let me tell you this, right? I remember one time
you're offending my prudish white upbringing here, Derek.
The church that I was an associate pastor in, right? These women came in and they were kind of random, but they all had on short skirts, exposing their cleavage, and they made their way to the front row. And so, me being the good associate that I was, I motioned to the ushers and greeters to make sure that these women had blankets to cover their laps. You know, because I didn't want the bishop to be tempted in his teaching.
What are we teaching our daughters? What are we teaching them?
But
We're
wait a
teaching,
second.
but
Here's
think about
the
that
thing.
language there, though. You're a temptation to the bishop. You're a temptation to the man of God.
No,
What does that do to the female psyche? I wonder. I'm
I,
sorry. I'm sorry. I just,
no,
I just
I'm
had a
with you
moment.
on that. But what I'm saying is that these chicks came in there they were on assignment, right? And I'm
Gotcha.
not saying it was assignment from the devil or anything like that, but they were
They had a
there,
goal.
huh?
They had a goal in mind.
They had a goal, and
God.
they you know, they were in touch with their inner hoe. You know, I'm just putting it out there. Now, this is not to say that, you know, that the man of God was going to be tempted by all this. I just knew that, like I said, okay, I'm thinking about this for me. If I'm now, okay, let me just say this. Let me say this. True story. I was preaching revival in California. And there was a girl that came in and she sat down on the front row. And Aaron, I promise you, this chick had on no panties.
Mm-hmm. She was giving you the Sharon Stone treatment from.
Yeah, without the crossed legs.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, what
Yeah.
was that? Basic Instinct? That
Basic
famous
instinct.
shot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when these women came in to our church, I was like, okay, I know exactly what to do. Reduce the temptation on the man of God. But here's the thing is that if you are in a healthy sexual relationship, and it doesn't matter what your sexual preference is, but if you're in a healthy relationship that is gratifying and satisfying to you, then you won't look externally for what's out there. That's the point that I'm saying. Find somebody to fuck. That's my mic drop.
I'm sorry. I had a moment there. I just thought, what the hell do we do to girls and women in the church? Think about the messaging. Like, your body is evil. Your sexuality is evil. Your sexuality is going to tempt the man of God. Hey, what a mess. What a mess.
But you know what though? Let me say this, right? To keep it equal, right?
Yep.
Because there are churches where young men will
Oh,
show up on the front row,
absolutely. Well,
right? Because they know that that's the temptation of the man of God. I, Here's the thing: it doesn't matter whether it's a man or a woman. What I'm saying is that and
I
again,
get it. You're talking about the more uh hmm, dare I say diabolical, devilish.
yeah,
You're talking about ill intention. I have an
ill
ill
intention.
intention here. I get it. No, I totally get it. Totally get it. But I think I was still hung up on the, I don't know.
No,
It's
no, 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 no. But here's the thing. You're right. You're right. What are we teaching our young girls about their bodies? But here's the thing. What are we teaching our young boys about their
no, I
bodies?
agree. Both. We're
Yeah.
both equally screwed.
Because you know, here's the thing, right? People made a big deal about Bishop Eddie Long
Yeah.
before he died, that he was, you know, having these trysts with young boys or whatever. And the thing is, I said, like, if Eddie Long was gay or bisexual, right? The thing would be to just say, okay, I'm gay, I'm bisexual, and roll with that, right? Because then it takes the stigma out of it. But when you say, okay, well, I'm a man of God and God doesn't honor homosexual relationships or bisexual relationships, and so I'm going to hold on to this, and you know, now you basically what you do is you create a setup for your own failure. And so I'll say this to everyone who's out here preaching or teaching, and if you are attracted to people of the same sex, then be honest about it. Don't try to, don't try to. There was a very famous pastor who's from Colorado that you and I both know,
Yeah.
and he got caught in a scandal with young boys, and his whole ministry came crashing down. So then he came back and said, well, I'm not gay. I just have these evil thoughts, and my wife has forgiven me and everything else. And so now this fucker goes around talking about how evil, gay relationships or bisexual relationships are. And I'm like, dude, be true to yourself. Just be fucking
Yeah.
honest. And
Yeah.
if you do that, the world will appreciate you.
So
They'll acknowledge you.
this is a good time to give a hat tip, or I don't know, hat tip's not the right phrase. To show some honor to Bishop Jim Swilley, because he came out, he recognized very early on that he had same-sex attraction, and after he'd heard about a number of suicides of young men in the Christian church who had the same makeup but were struggling with the messaging, he decided to come out publicly and gave up his megachurch. So just a real heroic, in my view, and
Yeah.
noble act. So give a shout out to him. So Doug says this, though, because this pertains to our conversation. I just saw his comment. He says orgasms create babies, goals, visions, whatever the visual in the mind. Oop, it just moved on me. At whatever the visual is in the mind at the time. That includes worry. Watch this. Monotheistic religion can bring criminal energies through the orgasm if a person is thinking, oh no, I'm sinning. Oh no, I'm such a sinner. This is just ego gratification. No, silly. It is equally sacred to the most potent meditation. Wow. Think about that. We're bringing these creative energies, and if it's criminalized in our mind, then we're transmuting it into criminal energy that then manifests itself in criminal activity, or can.
Oh my goodness. I mean, talk about a DNA expression.
Right?
Wow.
Wow.
I don't know about you, Aaron, but this particular conversation, this has been very relieving for me. I feel like a weight has been lifted from my shoulders.
Wow. Wow. Good. Yeah.
And I don't know about anybody else that's listening, but man, so many people are, God, this really blows my mind because I hear this all the time and I'm so used to it. People say, "Oh, well, you're just, a messenger of the devil. You're a vessel of Satan." And for me, I don't give a fuck. I don't care, right? It's like you could say what you want, and honestly, I don't care. But not everyone is as thick-skinned or as
Right.
developed as because I think that you and I have developed some spiritual muscle,
Yeah.
so that when shit is heaped on us, we're like, whatever, dog, right? But there are people out here that when this happens, they're like, man, I had said something earlier this week. I said it's amazing how some people will defend the people that shit on them.
Hmm. That's
And
Christian virtue, man. That's the Christian way.
it really is. It's like, and there's this young man up in the Detroit area, and he, when people come in on his, like, he'll post something that's really, controversial to Christians, and the whole Christian community will come in and they'll just dump on him. And he'll apologize for these guys. He'll be the apologist for them. And I'm like, dude, these are the guys that are shitting on you. Fuck them.
But see, here's the problem. And this is why I'm so passionate about this. And yeah, as we're talking, I'm getting more passionate about it. There does not exist in the Western collective unconsciousness even space for a spiritual path that's forged out of the left-hand path that is not evil. So here's what I mean by that. If somebody has a inclination towards spirituality, if they have psychic gifting, if they, have a sense of something transcendent, or they believe in God or whatever, the only options they have are this right-hand path spiritualities, and they're all the same based on all the same kind of principles. So what Derrick and I are saying tonight is there is a path of spirituality that can be very fulfilling, that can be very freeing, that has nothing to do with these right-hand path models. And so this goes back to, again, in the Western consciousness, we just naturally feel like being nice is a spiritual virtue. So, I can see this guy, like, his spirituality rising up and saying, I don't want to speak evil of someone else. I don't want to, and having to make apologies for that. But as a counselor and as a psychologist, that's very codependent behavior. That's the behavior of the abused towards the abuser, that the abuser programmed the abused to have in order to perpetuate the relationship of abuse. And so what I want to give a clarion call tonight, and probably going forward, I'll probably be inspired to do more with this, is that there is you can be a spiritual person, you can be a virtuous person, and still be a strong person who honors the principles of evolution and our predatory aspects, our self-defensive mechanisms that have caused us to evolve to this in the first place. Like, how can we possibly demonize those and say they're evil when it perpetuates the species on the planet? Okay, I'm done.
So I want to say, this is my closing comment, right? What do you call a person who has a right hand and no left hand?
I don't know.
Disabled.
Yes. Yes.
So if all you know is the right hand path and you are not indoctrinated or understanding of the left hand path, you, my friend, are spiritually disabled. Yeah. And so in the spirit, what's that?
You're disabled in life. I mean, not just spiritually disabled. The way you express yourself, the way you relate to other people, the way you approach success, the way you approach your sexuality, all of it's affected by this. All of it's affected by this. This is the problem with this religious shit. It affects every aspect of people's lives. There's no aspect that it leaves alone. Sorry, Derrick, for cutting you off.
No, man. I want to close my thoughts by invoking the spirit of the salamander. Because if the salamander loses its right forehand, it grows another. It adapts. So in the natural, if we lose our right hand,
I love it.
We can't grow another one, but spiritually, we can. Yeah. And that's where I'm going to leave it.
So when you said that, I mean, I know when you were saying that, do you ever remember, did you ever have this experience when you were ministering in the Christian camps where you just knew there was an impartation that happened? You just knew that something like what you said powerfully penetrated into people's psyche and became a force for change. Did you ever have that experience? I'm sure you did.
Absolutely.
Just as you were saying that, and I feel like this entire broadcast, but especially when you say I felt an impartation. And you know what? Fuck that. I'm not giving up language to describe phenomenon because it was religious at one time. I'm not going to let them have that language. There was an impartation tonight of spiritual energy that absolutely is going to be transformational for some of the people that watch this. I absolutely felt and sensed that kind of an impartation. And especially when you said that about the spirit of the salamander, I really felt an impartation that there are people that are going to grow spiritually, something that right-hand path religion cut off of them that they need in order to make them more functional and capable and empowered and effective in their lives. So there is something grand that is happening.
Man,
And
you know, I'm just gonna say this before we go is that, dude, this is 2023, and I think this is the most badass show that we've done this year. I'm not kidding. I swear, I feel that in my spirit. I feel it in my bones. I feel it in my flesh. This has been the shit.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks. Sorry we didn't get to everybody's comments. Thanks for commenting, everybody, and thanks for watching. Share this with your friends. You know, let's start a revolution. Come on, let's start a movement. Let's start a revolution.
Yes.
And if you want to donate, you know, reach out to us. That'd be helpful too. We do this for free.
Because, listen,
there's a reason it's called Freemasons Friday.
Aaron and I need to get together. We need to be in the same room, and you guys need to experience the energy of us being in the same room. So donate. Listen, my Cash App. I'm gonna put it in the chat here. My Cash App is Derrick E. Day. So you can Cash App me. And I promise you that 100% of your proceeds will go toward getting Aaron and Derrick in the same room.
There's a reason it's called Freeology Friday, people. Come on. Some of you won't even, you feel guilty if you tip your waitress less than 20%. You'll come have a great philosophical and spiritual meal with us. And
listen, Aaron and I will get together. We will drink. We will smoke cigars. We will love on each other. We'll be in the same room. Our energies will be merged. And I promise that each one of you that watches this, you're going to absolutely, dare I use a Christian word? You're going to be blessed by this.
Yes, you are. Hey, you know what? Let's quit giving up those words. I mean, that really, you want to talk about growing in real time? Because I wanted to say, I really felt something imparted. And it felt like, you know, old times. That's why I brought that up. And it's like, oh no, I can't use that language anymore. Fuck that shit. I'm going to start saying blessed. I'm going to start saying impartation.
Yeah, let's say blessed. Let's say impartation. Let's say unction.
Yeah. Why do we have to give up words? All right.
Preach, man.
I'm going in real time.
Hey, go to the closing and let's get out of here.
All right, everybody, thank you for coming to our TED Talk. Thank you for coming to our satanic service. I hope the sacrifice was a sweet smelling savor in the nostrils of Lucifer. Hail, Lucifer. Hasta luego. Peace and hair grease. Peace out.
Love you, man. Love y'all.
Somebody's good.